So at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, he's going around, he's healing people, and he's teaching, and really starting to draw a big gathering. And one day he notices a large crowd around him. And he chooses this moment to come out with a bang, to lay it all out there. In fact, Matthew 7 is wrapped up with this. It says, when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, for he taught with real authority, quite unlike their teachers of religious law. See, Jesus' teachings were new, they're radical, and delivered in a way that other people hadn't heard before. But Jesus was clear. He didn't come to get rid of the old law, but to fulfill its purpose. You see, Jesus wasn't a teacher of religious law. He was a teacher of life, a teacher of God, and a teacher of what God really expects of us. So now in this study, as we continue to move forward and we move on from the Old Testament and we're going into the New Testament, I think it's important for us to realize that the Old Testament was written to point towards Jesus, and the New Testament is now we get to see how. And I hear a lot of times people say, well, the Old Testament, I don't have to follow that, or I'm not bound by the old law. Now, while some of that may be true, it's important for us to not forget it, especially why it was given. Here in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus raises the bar even higher than the law. He says, yeah, don't murder, which is pretty easy for all of us to agree not to do, or at least I hope. But then he also goes on and says to not be angry with another people, to not call them fools, to not curse at them, even internally in your mind or out loud where they can hear you. So I want you to pause for a quick moment. Think over this past week of how many people you've been angry at. Maybe it's the person who cut you off in traffic. Maybe it's that coworker that lied behind your back. Maybe it's your husband for being lazy. Yeah, Jesus tells us to not do those things. But Jesus doesn't stop there. He goes on and says, don't commit adultery. And then adds, don't even look at another with lust. Otherwise, you've already committed adultery in your heart. Ouch. I don't know about you, but this isn't much fun anymore. I mean, Jesus just called us a bunch of adulterers and murderers. I'm starting to feel guilty. I don't know about you, but this is hard. I mean, he comes in and just lays it down. But you see, Jesus didn't say these things to make us feel guilty. He was saying these things to bring it back to a heart issue. You see, there's not a formula to get right with God. It's not about do's and don'ts. He just wants your heart. He wants it pure. So when we say, at least I didn't murder, cheat on my wife, we feel okay. But it's not about what we do. It's about what's in our heart and in our mind. You see, Jesus takes us to prayer as well. There's no formula to it. In fact, the example that's given to us with the Lord's Prayer is just that. It's an example. He says to pray like this, not to pray this. And so it doesn't matter what you say. He's just looking for the real you, for the raw connection with him that comes from the heart. And so when you talk to God, just adore him, praise him. We need to go to God and ask for forgiveness. We need to go to God and pray for other people. We need to thank him. And then we also need to pray for God's work to be done. And Jesus just keeps going at it with these bold teachings, just taking it to people. He says, in the law, we're told to love our neighbors, and then we hate our enemies. Jesus says, no. I'm telling you to love your enemies. And I'm sure everybody then and even us today are like, say, what? You want us to love the person that just fired me? You want me to love the person who just stole from me? You're telling me you want me to love the person that I just can't get along with because they complain about everything and nobody likes them. You want me to love them? How? So, who is that person in your life that you can't stand? That you really just struggle, that your skin just crawls every time they come around? Who's that person that you can't reconcile with, that you can't forgive? I'm sure there's probably a lot of people coming into our heads right now that we just butt heads with people. So how can you accept them for who they are? You see, it's easy to like the nice people. It's easy to love others when you get along with them. But Jesus calls us to be different. He sets the standard higher. You see, Jesus wants us to be different. He wants us to stand out and shine. And when you love others, even the unlovable ones, you are shining Jesus' light, and it gets recognized. Jesus closes this all up with a call to action. He says, "Anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is wise." Anybody who listens and follows it. You see, we've been going through this study, we've been reading the Bible, and we're hearing a lot of good things. And Jesus just went through the Sermon on the Mount with a whole lot of great teachings. It's good to hear, it's good to discuss it in your groups, but it doesn't stop there. We need to follow it. We need to do it. So I want to encourage you right now to reread the Sermon on the Mount and really pay attention to what Jesus says here. Take it to heart, remember it, and then do it.